Well, let's get the first thing out of the way. Let's go Bengals. But for the rest of this, on the episode, we get into some teaching, hence the wine. Some industry plants, Bobby Althoff and what's going on with her. Did you know Huberman's got stuff going on? But most importantly, I'm a sports guy now. Stay tuned.
I have a quick question. Really random. I know every once in a while you always talk about like teaching stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever thought about just making a teacher's podcast?
Yeah. I put together a couple like concepts and ideas for teachers podcasts. I think they are best because I call my dad every day after school, and I used to always talk to him because he's been in education my whole life, and it was always good to have a teacher to connect with, to like, as a teacher, some of the things that like stress and drain you doesn't translate when I like communicate to somebody else who doesn't work in a similar industry, like why that's so annoying and like why, like I'm just complaining to complain, but like when I'm complaining to another teacher, it's like I know that they're understanding at a base level. And that was so helpful for that whole time, every day, like calling my dad, like asking him about stuff and getting to know, that I'm just like talking to another teacher. And it was something that like really worked so well. It was a big part of me and Booth Babe's like early dating phase. As I started, when
She works she's not a teacher, but she works like in that field too.
she was always a teacher. She was a teacher, and now she's still technically a teacher, but she does she's the reading specialist, so she works in small groups. So she's not like a classroom teacher, but she is still a teacher and whatever.
Maybe I misunderstood because I thought she was an admin.
Yeah, and that's like an example, like when I say like it's different when you talk to another teacher, like someone who works in education, because like it's kind of weird, like, yeah, she's not really a teacher, but she is a teacher, like by all, like to the average person, like whenever, she's introduced to someone new, she's like, yeah, I'm a teacher. And she is. But if she talks to me, I always kind of like point out like, well, you're not like you're not a classroom teacher. And I sometimes forget to use the distinction. But early into our relationship, and I've talked about this if you've watched pretty much any of the Booth Babe episodes, how I wanted to establish in my relationship phone calls. Like I wanted, because I never really like texting. I'm bad at like texting conversations. It's just not engaging enough to me. I grew up in a different era, I guess. So I always appreciate phone calls, and I've already been, used to phone calls with my dad. And I'm like, it's just something that I feel like is important to me in my next relationship. So I started off like, just thinking of an excuse. I knew there was a show that we were watching. She was a couple episodes ahead of me. One day I like purposely watched the like episodes to catch up, and I called her like just to be like, oh yeah, so what you think of, and it was like our first phone call. It was very awkward, but it was to open up this idea. And then the next like phone call we were talking about, I just kind of like asked her how her work day was, and she started sharing some stuff about like her day with teaching and the headache and this and that. And by the end of it, I was she's kind of like, oh, I'm sorry to just throw that all at you. I'm like, no, trust me, as a teacher, I know how important it is to talk like this, like with another teacher, having that bond to share. So I threw out like every single day, if you want to just share with me your day, good, bad, ugly, whatever, just come give me a call. Like, and it was to like help build the habit of we do a phone call and we text if it's like, did you say 6 o'clock? Do you want to go to, Rhode Island or Mass today? Like just like quick little details as text messages, but phone calls are conversations. And for a while, like we did a lot of like teacher talk. I mean, still to this day, like if we're both home at a reasonable hour, like as we're cooking and eating and stuff, we're talking about school and all that. And so, yeah, like I forgot what your initial question was as I started telling like,
Thinking about like doing a teacher's podcast.
oh yes. So my teacher's podcast and that the couple of ideas that I've come up with, I've kind of like narrowed down to like what I think would be the best. I would need to always be talking to a teacher. I don't think doing a solo teacher podcast would be very valuable. There could be solo segments and like the once every like 10 episodes, I could do like a solo like tips episode or a reflection on certain things. There's certain content that I could do solo, but what I find so valuable, and that's why I went into like why the phone calls with Booth Babe and all, is because when you're talking to a teacher, one, as I share a story that I've had, they're sharing a story. So I knew that I would either have to always get teacher guests on, and, being in this area, getting any genre or industry type of guests, like it's hard to consistently get guests on every single episodes. So I started to like learn that, and I want to have teachers come on every so often, but it would really need to be like a co-host situation. And I would love to put together, a podcast, even if it's not as routine as like a weekly podcast, even if it's like, monthly or even more of a serial podcast where it's like 10 episodes, seasons, but kind of like co-hosting with another teacher. So someone who is watching or listening can kind of hear the back and forth and the understanding and like what tips work, what tips don't. And also kind of like hopefully getting like maybe different like grade levels and stuff, even if it was like a teacher and maybe like a parent who has a student in a district. I feel like it just needs to be someone that like to go back and forth. So the days that we don't have a guest line or a teacher can't come down to record, we can still create a good teacher episode. So that's my hold off, and I have more to share off air. But we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge when it arrives.
For me, the way I see it is more of just like almost like like Andrew Huberman, for example, right? Like how he will just like have full on episodes, or he's just like he has a topic that he talks about, and that it's just him. He just like, and he'll have guests every once in a while, but it's just like he talks about this one topic.
I don't have a.
I'm not,
I mean, it kind of is that. I don't have a teaching background. I was a business major who happened to find an office job as at a school district that I started to learn and because when I was in like high school, I wanted to be a math teacher one day, and then it just wasn't my path. But I started to kind of like get reinterested in the idea of becoming a teacher again. So I looked into it and then found a job teaching, but I didn't have like the background information. Like my sister went to school for teaching, so learned how to like build a curriculum, learned where to go, learned how to do this, learned what prerequisites and things you need. I got thrown into it, and I got thrown into it the pandemic year. So I had like 3 months that I was learning how to be a teacher, just focusing on classroom management, not having any like lessons planned, and just like figuring all that stuff out. Pandemic hits, and I like then all school districts, the entire mode of operation changed for everybody because we have to figure out a new way to do this. So we're figuring out all these new ways, and like last year and this year, all the veteran teachers are kind of getting back into their groove because it's turned back into like, all right, we're back to the old way, like go back to being a teacher the same way but now we have the things that we learned, like, oh, Google Classroom's a lot more used and versatile, and now we do a lot more, Zoom and remote, and we have all these other options and new tools that we adapted from the pandemic. But the basic mode of like a school is about the same as it was before. But now this is not anymore. But like for staff meetings, like I don't necessarily have to. We don't have to all go to the auditorium where no one can like have a desk where they can take notes or anything. I can just stay in my office or my classroom and join the Zoom that the principal is doing from their office, so that the whole time I can just sit there and take notes, and I don't have to like get up, go walk over here and then just sit and just, lose focus, whatever. It's like we found different ways, and especially like anytime you're having like a parent meeting for all kinds of reasons, IEP meetings, any type of accommodation meeting, or even behavioral, like too many absences. You used to like the parents have to be in on the meeting. So sometimes it'd be hard. Like, all right, we scheduled a meeting for this date, but that parent couldn't show up that date, like the morning of. And then it's not like we can go, oh, okay, like let's just have you come in an hour later, because they always schedule meetings throughout the day. So the next time that they can coordinate the principal, the superintendent, the 4 main core subject teachers, and whoever else is supposed to be on that meeting with everybody is like 2 months down the road, because there's so many other moving pieces. Now it's like, well, just log in. Like you can log in from home. Teachers can log in from their classroom. So, they'll still need like a sub or whatever in the thing, but at least they're like able to observe their classroom and handle anything if it needs to be handled. They don't have to go all the way down to the principal's office to do this meeting. They can just like do the meeting from their desk, where they just have all their resources and everything. So, so I don't have a strong enough understanding of what a teacher is and what it is to be a teacher. That's why I would want a co-host or someone who does have went to school to be a teacher, is like always planned to be a teacher, really loves the teaching stuff, as opposed to me, who found it, has a real passion for it, enjoys it, knows a lot, has a lot of advice and tips, or at least the way I go about a lot of those things, so that there can be that back and forth. So if I do say something, they can go, oh, well, actually, you're supposed to make sure that the speech pathologist is in on that meeting, like things that I don't know. So if I give a tip that's incorrect, they can kind of help balance that out, or just give general feedback. So, from their background.
Because it's for a split second, the way you were mentioning it, up until points that you made towards the end there, I was just I still feel like you're still getting the teaching experience from the experience itself, not just
yeah. And I get those things.
That's where I'm I feel like you could have the conversation solo about moments where it's
well, it wouldn't be a conversation.
Well, yeah, because you're not talking to, well, you're still talking to the audience, so it's still kind of conversation.
It's not a
It's not back and forth.
So because I've thought about that, and I could do a Huberman, but it wouldn't. I don't think it would be a podcast. If I did a solo teaching thing, it would be definitely more of a short form, 10 to 20 minutes, like you said, pick a topic. Here's how you do this classroom management tip, and go on about that. For the conversation, yes, I am talking to an audience or whoever's listening, but I get the value out of the back and forth with another teacher, whether it's me talking to my dad and getting off everything I need to, all the complaints and whatever, or I'm listening to Booth Babe, share her complaints, because then in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, yeah, I did have something like that, and I remember how stressful, I like the conversation of it, even if there's more listening on one side of the conversation. I think it's just more organic, and it frees me up to find parts of that, topic within the teacher bracket, whatever, like the Huberman style, that I wouldn't necessarily consider like it, because Huberman, I'm sure does a lot of like research or like has all this stuff. Like he doesn't go, oh, I know enough about ADHD. Let me just talk for 3 hours. It's like, all right, I'm gonna do a podcast on ADHD next week. So for a week, I'm gonna double. Yeah, yeah. So like he still has that brain. He still uses that during his ADHD thing, but he at least refreshes himself on the names of the studies that he has done. And I think
But that's what I'm saying. Like his brain just like holds all that information.
right.
Somehow, like I don't.
Yeah, his prep work, his research is like, all right, let me just go through my files or like every article about, ADHD. And then he just reads the title. He goes, oh yeah, that was the one that had the study about this, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So now I remembered to talk about that because I haven't talked about ADHD in a year. I just need to remember the name of the study and I can tell you everything about the study, every result. Like his brain is built different. Were you saying there was some recent controversy about him?
I didn't like dive too deep into it, just because the only thing I could find was that one YouTube video, and one article that I didn't actually even open up. But there was, because it just seemed like it was this one person. Like when I looked it up, like no one else was really talking about it. But I guess somebody tried to fuck up his Wikipedia page. And make it seem like he was not a real like scientist at all.
But like, who cares? I'm trying to think of a good example because I definitely can think of one if I have enough time. But like, who cares if he's actually a scientist? Is everything he does, everything he says, actual like?
But that's what they were trying to say.
Are you discrediting his information or are you discrediting him?
They're both.
Even if you because if you just discredit him and his information's all accurate, then I don't give a fuck if he's a scientist or a furry. Just keep giving me the information. You'd care if he's a furry? Would you?
Part of me would care more so of like I don't want to watch the visuals at least. I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure, but he could literally be a furry. He could literally be a furry. Huberman Lab, he doesn't have to be his furry costume. He can just go to the furry conventions. I don't care what you do. Like keep giving me the good deets. That's all I care about.
That's what I'm saying. For me, it doesn't bother me. But as long as you're not doing something like illegal, I don't care. Then I have to be like, all right, buddy, I don't know if I should support you anymore.
Yeah.
You know, but
like Logan Paul. Yeah, we got into the Bobby Althoff earlier, and I guess I learned a little bit of like what an actual industry plan is, and we were trying to like break it down, and I think after that conversation, because she, like the way people are calling her an industry plant, some of the defense is that it's like it's not really an industry plant because when they compare it to like an industry plant in music, her story isn't exactly the same. But I think it is still an industry plant. It's just like this is the new wave of industry plants, or an industry plant is going to look different in podcasting than it does in music.
I think it just looks different, period.
Just looks different. She's still an industry plant. The other thing,
Billie Eilish, for example, right?
Billie Eilish was a legend.
Billie Eilish, like her family was already in the industry before she.
So is she really an industry plant, or is she just,
She was grown in the industry. Industry plant.
Yeah, but she wasn't planted.
But it's like, it's one of those things where it's like there's people that have to do the work to get noticed by the industry to be taken, right? By the industry.
Yeah.
There's people that are just starting in the industry. That's the industry plant, where it's like you don't have the moment of like I need to grow and get to here, right?
Yeah.
It's more of just like I'm already here.
Yeah, and
That's industry plant.
when you look at like Shaquille O'Neal and Richard Payton, who's like a small white. Is it Richard Payton? I forget the. Or I'll do a more relevant comparison, like Shaquille O'Neal and Larry Bird, and I know they're a little different eras, but Shaquille O'Neal is gonna have a little bit of an easier time becoming, a great basketball player. But just like I think Larry Bird is actually pretty tall, so I got to think of like a short guy. It's like, in order to make it to the NBA, you gotta be even better than, like a person who's just like naturally gifted. Like Billie Eilish was, lucky that she had the qualities, like, the family already in the industry that made her journey easier than someone who didn't grow up with parents or whatever, like moved a lot or whatever. Like, it was harder for them to break through and get into the industry. But the complaint that a lot of people do, they just want to complain about well, you're just an industry plant and just discredit, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can say that it was easier for that person if they truly are an industry plant, but them being an industry plant doesn't take away your chance of becoming, successful in that career. And if you are spending more time complaining and being jealous about industry plants have it so easy, then you're taking away the time that you could just put into like, I just got to get better. I got to be the best. My version obviously isn't big enough to give me the success I'm looking for. Very early on, I remember one day I was like walking on a beach with my dad after just kind of having this like rough day. Me and my brother like got in a fight, and he was just trying to calm me down as the middle child and like, hey, everything's okay. Like, you're still doing really well. And the conversation about how I felt even and I must have been in like 7th grade, how at that time I felt like there was like too much pressure. Like, Chris doesn't have to study. Chris doesn't have to he just goes to school. I never see him doing homework. He just like picks things up really quick and does really well in school. And I struggled to read a chapter of a book and blah, blah, blah. And my dad tells me, he's just like, you know what? That might not always be the case for your brother. He might go to college and have a nice reality check because he never had to learn how to learn. He never had to learn how to study or do homework. And then he's going to have a lot more, and it's going to be really hard for him. Maybe that doesn't happen, but your brother always picked it up very quickly, and that's awesome for him. But that doesn't mean that you can't also do straight A's and do as well as him. You just have to work a little harder. So when it takes Chris an hour to read an entire book, and it takes you 5 hours to read the same book, that's all that it means. It just means you have to put in a little more effort. You have to try a little bit harder. But you're not unable to get there because of your brother. Your brother can get there, and you can too. You just have to put in more work. And I was mad at my dad for telling me that at a young age, but it immediately set in because I don't have a counterpoint. There is no counterpoint to that. He's right. I just have to work harder at that thing. And then once I started to really learn the things that I am good at and I'm passionate about, like I picked up it because it was only a couple of years later that I got like deep into my Yu-Gi-Oh phase and was playing competitively. I picked up Yu-Gi-Oh so quickly. Yu-Gi-Oh is not a school subject, so I can't really compare it to anything my brother did, but my brother never picked up Yu-Gi-Oh quickly. I tried playing Yu-Gi-Oh with my brother a couple of times, and it's not like he outperformed me or like learned how to build a deck or like started to do all these things and pick it up as quickly as he picked up, the Scarlet Letter or something, but I did. So that when that moment started to happen, what my dad told me really started to take effect. It's not that I can't do the things that my brother does or that, my peers do. It's that I have to work harder at those things if I want those things to be my goal. Or I can just find the things that I'm actually interested and actually good at and get really good at them, and that becomes my thing. And look at this, the whole podcasting journey and, you know, any YouTuber or influencer or this, that, like there's a lot of time and effort that they put into this, but some of them catch a little, like, you know, trend a little earlier, and they do really good really quick, and they blow up very fast, or they don't, and they, like stand-ups, they put 10, 15 years before they even get a chance to have a Comedy Central 30-minute, you know, spot on whatever, you know, Comedy Central, I forgot what the show was called, Presents, Comedy Central Presents. And it takes them years to even get that little, like, notice. So, like, you have to just work as hard as you possibly can to the things that you want to do. So don't, like, it's annoying every time I hear these types of stories, like, where there's controversy. We talked recently about, like, the Doja Cat shit, about, like, I know it's a little bit different subject, but when, you know, just, like, the mass, or, like, the majority take on it is, like, oh, they're dismissive, like the Bobby Althoff, like, dismissive, like, oh, she's just an industry plant. It's like, yeah, she didn't have to work as hard as the average person to get to that spot. She's going to have to keep working to keep that spot. An industry plant and the agency that helps them out can only provide everything else but what you actually put into it. So we'll know if she falls off and just stops doing it, like, she probably was an industry plant. But it doesn't mean that you really don't have the right to be jealous if that is what you are only focusing on. There's other things you could be jealous about with, you know, the Bobby Althoff or a lot of industry plant stories, but to simply be jealous because, well, they had it easier. Yeah, they did. But do you want to do it too? Because them having it easier doesn't limit you from doing it yourself. You can still do it. You just have to work a little harder. So just work a little harder. But if you keep spending that time just being mad, like, wow, that's not fair, she got it super easy, you're going to miss out on your chance to get there because you're going to take more time. So every second that you put into complaining and being jealous and just, like, resenting the fact that, you know, some people have it easier than you is a second taken away from you putting in your Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours to be what you are jealous of. Wow, that's going to suck. Is it just the battery? We're going to pause and come back a couple of seconds for you, a couple minutes for me. Pour myself a fresh glass so we can get back into this. Something I teased in the intro we haven't got to yet. Gio's big on this one.
Titties. Oh, wait, no. I'm not big on titties. I'm big on ass.
When he's done with his bit, I'll
I'm guessing that's not
sports.
so big on this one.
So, whole channel dedicated to sports. So at least I know I won't, like, be questioned on any of this, except for in the comment section. I want.
You don't read anyway.
Depending on no, I read mine. You know who I'm talking to. No one. I'm literally. So I teased it a little bit too last episode. Who else but Joe? Joe Burrow is the only other else. I am going to pick my team this year. Last year, I did an episode and everything where I talked about doing my fantasy draft, that I'm starting this Pick'ems League, and what teams I'm really excited about and interested in. And the past couple of years, as I've done fantasy, I'm getting more into the sport, at least during the season, and even in the playoffs with the Celtics doing so well. Like, I was into that. I like definitely get into sports at certain times. One of my big like mottos is I don't need to watch a sport. I love the stats of the sport. I like going to the games or watching the game with people, even if it's on the TV or whatever. But I don't really care if I'm going to miss out on a game. The games that I do like actually care about watching live are like the big like milestones, like these like super memorable moments. Like I watched Messi win the World Cup. I watched Ronaldo win the Euros. I watched every game when the Celtics were in the finals against the Warriors. Like those big games, I'm always going to watch those. Anytime there's like a chance for history to be made, I watch those. Otherwise, when history is made on in a like regular season game or something, I'm okay watching the highlights. I'm okay keeping up with the sport. And I have really been finding myself during each season, like really getting into all of these sports. And from my, upbringing, just not caring about sports, I used to always say, like, whenever I would see my brother and my dad, like, getting really into the sports, that, oh, it's something you do when you get older. And then I started to finally realize that it's not about getting older. Like, it's not like broccoli or Brussels sprouts. Like, when you're old enough, you just like them. It's just not what I was ever really into. And every time, because I was like, oh, yeah, once I'm in high school. And then I got through high school, and I'm like, oh, once I'm in college, I'll get into sports. And I got a little bit. Oh, once I'm out of college, like, I'll get into sports. And it's always been like dabbling into it just during the season. And now I'm getting more and more into it, and especially like deep into it during the seasons is really where I've got. But when I was a kid, I was still not a video gamer, but I played way more video games than I do now. As we know, just Call of Duty. One of the big games that I used to really like was Madden. I always had my brother, or sometimes my dad would play with me. And I really enjoyed playing Madden. We also had NBA Street, a couple others. When I used to play Madden as a kid, 2007 was like the era. So in 2007, 16 years ago, I was 11 years old, so 5th, 6th grade. This is also the time where I'm coming out of elementary school, where my dream job was to be the next Steve Irwin or Jeff Corwin, just one of those like naturists, those, survival guys. I loved animals. I loved going to zoos. I loved anything animals, animal documentaries, etc. Jurassic Park was like the coolest concept until I found Star Wars. Well, at the time, one of my favorite animals, I had many stuffed animals of this animal, was always the tiger. I even knew before playing my first game of Madden that Bengal was a reference to Bengal Tigers, just hearing the name. Well, I loved the Bengals jerseys, mostly the helmets. When I was a kid, like 11 years old, playing, they had the stripes on the helmets, but the jerseys also had stripes. Madden 07, if you've ever played, not only could you create a player, you could even create an entire team. Before I started creating teams, me and my brother created a player. I created a quarterback because, I don't know, I thought quarterback was the coolest position because it is. And my brother created a running back. Not because he thought it was the coolest. He did play the position, and he did his favorite player at the time was LaDainian Tomlinson. So it makes sense why you're picking it. But I really think, and I hope he watches this episode, or at least listens, I think he just picked it because he's better than me, specifically at video games. And his team all along was the Falcons. That era, Michael Vick was the quarterback. So he has the best quarterback in the game And we both get to pick one creative player. And we'd always play with our creative players against each other. So he picks the best quarterback that's a dual threat and then created the best running back in the game, 99 overall. We just max out all the stats, obviously. So now, no matter what he does, every time he snaps the ball, he's getting a touchdown, essentially. So he's just really better at the game. He just understood the game. I just go, oh, I really like the colors. I like tigers. I think quarterback's the coolest. Like when I was on the playground, I used to always want to be quarterback when I was playing with my friends and stuff. You know, not that I was good. I thought I was good, but obviously not. I'm not very athletic. Anyways, so I really liked my quarterback on the Bengals. And then I kind of got to the phase of like, I found Call of Duty. Don't really care about any other video game. I'm just playing Call of Duty now. And then I also started to realize, like, I'll find sports eventually, and here's eventually, and I'm finding sports again. Last year, if I remember correctly, and I don't know what number episode it was, but it was right at the start of the school year, I made a claim that my team this year is going to be the Dolphins. I made that claim because a buddy of mine had recently joined the coaching staff of the Dolphins. So I was really just rooting for him. And I still am rooting for him. And I'm still rooting for the Dolphins, which is unfortunate because they're the same conference as the Bengals. But the Bengals are my team this year. The first year I started playing fantasy, I was getting back into football, and everybody that I'm able to watch football in this area are a huge Pats fan. We're coming off the craziest dynasty almost in sports history. Actually, arguably the craziest dynasty in sports history with Tom Brady and the Patriots. Well, I'm still like getting excited. I really like the young players. Mac Jones was, I don't know if it was his rookie or his second year, but I was really excited about him. And then last year, I was into the Dolphins. I like the Dolphins. I like a lot of players on the Dolphins. Patriots, I started watching them. I'm like, I don't really care. I never grew the New England attachment because I wasn't into the Patriots or really into sports during their dynasty. So, yeah, if I'm going to pick up a random team, I'm going to pick up a random team. And I started to see, I started to watch some Bengals stuff because last year, like 3 of my players were Bengals players. So I was like, oh, I want to see how they do. And then as I would watch some of their games, I was like, man, I'm really enjoying watching the Bengals. And as I kept watching, I started to realize, like, what players I like. And I really like Joe Burrow, and I started to do, like, some research. So I learned about Burrow. Like, obviously, I saw the memes and the stuff when he won at LSU, but it wasn't until I started watching him on the Bengals that I went back and started to understand the excellence that he had at LSU. And I was like, oh, okay, this guy's awesome. And now I'm falling in love with like T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and there was another running back that Perrion or Peroni or something like that I had on my team. But there was the other guy that I liked watching, but I hated because he was on one of the other people in my league's team. So, but I was like, wait, I really like the Bengals. I used to love the Bengals. I think Bengals are my team. So, about a month ago, I got a little drunk one night, and I was thinking about NFL. I think I just got the text from our commissioner of the fantasy league saying, like, oh, we're trying to pick a date. Are you still in this year? And I said, yes. So later that night, when I'm drunk, I'm thinking about NFL, I'm thinking about football, and I'm like, when I bring this up on the podcast, I want to pick a team this season. And unlike last year, when I picked the Dolphins and then started kind of like just watching random games and like rooting for random teams and all that, I want to pick a team and stand by them. That's why I was like, well, if I buy, a $180 jersey, I'm locking myself in. This is me locking myself in. Bengals. Do I predict that they'll win the Super Bowl? I will not make any Super Bowl predictions yet. I don't know enough about the sport, but for the first time ever in my sport fandom history, actually, I should say my NFL fandom history, I am picking a team that I'm rooting for. A lot of the times that I'm watching sports, I pick the team to root for before the game, watch the game, and then I don't really care. If my team won, they lost, doesn't matter. The only other team that happened that I actually like constantly root for is the Portugal squad in like the World Cup or whatever, like the national team. I want Portugal always, like that's my team. Even when they're playing USA, I'm okay if USA wins and makes it on, but I'd rather see Portugal win. Last year, I said Dolphins, but then there was even like a Dolphin. I went to the Dolphins game at Gillette, and I was more rooting for the Dolphins. I had like green and orange on, but I was really like, didn't really care. And I would watch every game as like, I don't really care. This year, I am following the Bengals. I'm rooting for the Bengals. They're going to win a Super Bowl with Joe Burrow. This year, I hope. But until they do, I am a Bengals fan. And I think by doing this, by making this claim, and then this season really committing to this team, I think it's going to make me more committed no matter what happens. If they create a dynasty, if they fall off, if they suck, if they lose, who cares? I am a Bengals fan. I'm making the claim. I'm rooting for the Bengals every single season. And unless the Bengals are not playing in the game, I'm rooting for the Bengals. Wait, that didn't make sense. I will still watch all of the NFL games that I want to watch and will pick my random teams to win. But by playoff season, I'm only rooting for the Bengals. Bengals are the team I'm rooting for. Honorable mentions, Dolphins. I do like Josh Allen and the Bills. The reason why I won't actually claim the Bills or ever really truly root for the Bills is because I root for the players, and I like Josh Allen, and I think it would be cool to watch history made if the Bills ever like won a Super Bowl. I think I have a little bit for the Patriots, just honorable mention. I just live here. I grew up. I did witness the dynasty, even if I was deep in NFL at the time or not. I think it'd be cool to, I don't know. I like the environment of New England when they're doing well. And any other teams? I don't really. Oh, I like the Chiefs. I just really like Patrick Mahomes. I think in terms of like watching history be made, Patrick Mahomes, to me, it's like watching Steph Curry. It's like, it's this not your typical quarterback, at least when he came into the league. And just like seeing his like absolute talent, and then in the first couple of years, despite his talent, he was always kind of like being ranked like 2, 3 or whatever. There was always like people were like more excited about these other quarterbacks or other players or other things happening, and I just really want to see like the Chiefs and Mahomes, really build a dynasty. But even the Patriots didn't win every Super Bowl throughout their dynasty, so give a couple to the Bengals. Yeah, I'm a Bengals fan. That's my claim. That's what I want to get into with football. I do have some fantasy suggestions. My draft, I believe, is going to be tomorrow as of the date of recording this, so I feel comfortable sharing, but don't take these as tips, and probably by the time this is out, everyone's already done their drafts. This year, and I wish I thought of this last year and I didn't do it, I am drafting a tight end first or second. Tight ends do way better. And all the wide receivers and running backs, and this is why I said first or second, are really good, but the 1 year I drafted Christian McCaffrey, he got injured anyways. And then that year and then another year, like I drafted, my first like 4 drafts have always been all running back or wide receivers. You're trying to feel like those are always been your big point makers. And then quarterbacks kind of going forgotten. But those big point makers, a lot of people want to draft right away. But then I find that, like, even the players that have the high projections, whether it's an injury or something, there's all those random second string running backs that, like, just catch a groove and then get into, like, a really good form and then just start getting more reps, and teams start to better utilize or just more utilize those players. Because, like, you know, some of the really good players that people, you know, choose from in fantasy are the players like I remember Gronkowski was always being double teamed. So when Gronk was injured, Edelman gets double teamed. So Edelman's not going to have as good of a game. And it's because he needs, like, the split coverage to focus on Gronk. And Gronk's still going to do what he does, but, like, Edelman's not as good of a receiver that week because, you know, he can't handle the double team as well. So you end up finding, like, in the waiver wire, a bunch of, like, random running backs and wide receivers that went undrafted or that people drop because they're not getting a lot of play time, and then late in the season. So, like, I don't think it's as important unless you are, like, one of the first 5 picks. That's why I said first 5 picks, I'll pick a running back first. Otherwise, if I have the later half of the draft, or, you know, especially if I have a later half, I'm picking a tight end first. I'm also, hot take, early picking a quarterback. Everyone says, especially in a small, I think my league is 10. Small leagues, there's so many quarterbacks. All quarterbacks are going to get you like 15 points on average. But, like, the good quarterbacks consistently, like, I had Mahomes last year, always getting me like 20 points, a 30-point week, and then a 12-point week, and then another 30-point week. It was, like, always doing really well. So I'm picking a quarterback early because there's so many times where it's like, you don't pick a good quarterback, and you just kind of like, all right, I can coast off of any quarterback. Any quarterback's going to get me 15 points every single week. Yeah, that's fine. But what if your quarterback could be the make or break every single week? Like, Mahomes is going to get 15 every single week. But then there's some weeks where he gets you 30, and that extra 15 points is why you won. So my thought, tight end, quarterback, early in the draft. That's my game plan going into it. I'll keep you updated as the season goes on, both about the Bengals and about my fantasy team. And if I do start or do go into that Pick'ems League, I'll let you know some of the teams I'm picking. Hopefully I can get them early enough out to you guys and see how we do. But I know just as much as a monkey throwing a dart at a board. Don't trust my picks. Don't trust my solutions. But if it works, you heard it here first. I am the fantasy football GOAT. Call me Bill Belichick. No, don't do that. Don't do that. He sucks now. Yeah, that's all I got on football. And we talked a little Bobby Althoff, some industry plant stuff, some Huberman stuff, some teaching stuff. Stay tuned. There's more coming, and I'll slowly start giving you guys more information about that as it really starts to come to light. But I've been really excited. Been working a long time on this project, mostly in thought, but as of the summer, into action, and I'm excited for it. So stay tuned. Peace. You like my cleaning? I just mix it into the table. It's a nice polish. Port wine works as a nice wood polish. I don't know if you guys have ever tried it, but yeah, it's a wood barrel. Give it back. That's what we do here on Ever Changing Vibe. We give back.